Bollywood is an experience unlike any other film industry. Since 1930s, films produced by Bollywood have displayed various tropes and formulas when it comes to the storytelling methods. Bollywood films are made primarily in the Hindi language. The most popular feature of Bollywood films is the song and dance sequences. Lavish costumes, elaborate choreography, and catchy tracks are the captivating key ingredients that make Bollywood stand out. Another trait found in most Bollywood films, especially the ones from the 20th century, is unexpected plot twists. This trait can be seen as both boon and bane, given that some films have deftly crafted twists that would make sense, and some have, well, some random twists that can be extremely absurd. Interval is another noteworthy feature in Bollywood films, where the films would have two segments, the first half and the second half. As soon as the first half is completed, the term interval appears, and the audience in the cinema halls would have approximately 15 minutes of a break before resuming the remainder of the film. Beyond that, the films made within the Bollywood industry are often classified as two different categories of films: mainstream films and art house films. Mainstream films would include the blockbusters and the commercially driven films, which are targeted at the mass audience. Meanwhile, art house films are somewhat of experiments that are targeted at the niche market, made without the backing of a major studio company, and do not necessarily adhere to the conventional formulae that mainstream films do. The art house films in Bollywood, or in Indian cinema generally, is popularly known as parallel cinema, as art house is more of a Hollywood term. Parallel cinema, a movement also known as New Indian cinema, originated in West Bengal in the 1950s and was inspired by Italian neorealism to produce films that were opposed to commercial films. One of the auteurs who is considered to be a representative of this cinema is a director named Vishal Bhardwaj. Vishal Bhardwaj has had a very riveting journey in his career in Bollywood, as he did not set out to be a film director. After playing cricket as a teenager, Bhardwaj found his calling in music. He started off by being a ghazal accompanist, which was then followed by being a music composer for feature-length films. He then managed to make his debut as a film director and a screenwriter with a feature-length film called Makri. But it was his subsequent film, Makbul, that won him international acclaim. On top of that, he composed the music for all of the films he has directed, and for some of the albums, he has even been a playback singer. But his work as a filmmaker, now that is something that has to be discussed, especially since it was a profession that he did not even have an affinity with earlier in his life. Vishal Bhardwaj's filmography includes many interesting projects such as The Blue Umbrella, Kamine, and Sadkun Maaf, but he is most notable for his Indian adaptations of three Shakespeare tragedies: Macbeth, for which he had made Makbul, Othello, for which he had made Omkara, and Hamlet, for which he had made Heder. He had very compelling takes on these materials, especially in his local cultural and social context. While they do retain the core elements from the source materials, Bhardwaj's contemporary renditions are designed such that they can be apropos of India's social climate. Makbul and Omkara focus on the underworld gangsterism, also known as the Indian mafias, with a hint of political influence. Heder was a crime drama centered around a revenge plot with the backdrop of the Kashmir conflicts in 1995. A scholar has once elucidated that Bollywood films filled with action sequences, comedy tracks, song and dance sequences are deemed masala movies. Bhardwaj's trilogy and his other films contain those elements, but his execution of those films is in no way considered to be masala oriented, as they are not mind-numbing films that are, devoid of logic. This is what sets him apart from his contemporaries. His films do embrace the tropes that Bollywood is known for, but his flamboyant and sophisticated approach to his films, especially in his Shakespeare adaptations, proves that a film can be a good amalgamation of realism and formalism. But how has Vishal Bhardwaj contributed towards Bollywood? Well, for instance, take his Shakespeare trilogy that has explored relevant issues such as the Kashmir dispute between India and Pakistan, the depiction of influential gangsters that lead to police corruption, and of course the most palpable one, which is found in all three installments of this trilogy, violence. Further to Bhardwaj's other entries in his filmography, they have also explored significant yet unfamiliar issues. For instance, Muthu Ki Bijli Ka Mandola explored poverty and oppression as its plot revolved around the conflict of development in a rural area, not for the sake of the residents, but for the sake of the developers instead. Based on a 2014 Scholar article, this film has been interpreted as a treatment of serious issues with the approach of levity and mirth instead of showing the plight of the victims. This can lead the audience to believe that these issues are not really incorporated into the narratives with the motive of necessarily having a stance on it. In fact, it can be deduced that these issues can be viewed as narrative tools that can be used to enhance the drama and tension of the films, as well as to present a reflection of the society and its predicaments to the audience, rather than to give a solution.
Cinema is the reflection of society, not vice versa. We cannot change society through film, but we can reflect what's right or wrong in the society, and we can just bring it on in front of everyone on the screen. I don't think that cinema is meant to be social change. Cinema is there to reflect what we are. It's our mirror.
Bhardwaj's films also impress critics and audience alike for the simple yet profound themes explored in them. The most common themes Bhardwaj focuses on are greed and treachery, which are found through the characters of Makbul, Langra, Ghazala and Kuramir, as well as almost every character in Kamine. He used these themes to not only propel the narrative with the dramatic events formed around it, but he also seemed to use it as a guideline to help his actors put up spectacular performances. Having said that, Bhardwaj is not always about immorality, as he had also explored family themes, especially between parents and their offspring, through films such as Muthu Ki Bijli Ka Mandola and Haider. He also depicted sibling relationships in his most recent outing, Pataka. This shows the dissimilitude in Bhardwaj's works. He does not only experiment with crime dramas, but dives into the comedy dramas and children's films as well, to provide entertainment for as many people as he can. As mentioned earlier, the 7-time National Award film winner is regarded as an exemplar of parallel cinema directors. But based on his filmography, he may not be completely arthouse based. He did start off making low-budget films without financial backing from major studios. But post Omkara, he became one of the most sought-after directors in Bollywood, and major studios did back his films since Kamine. Then why parallel cinema? One of the possible reasons why is the style of his content. Bhardwaj has been known for making hinterlands in India popular among the metropolitan crowds. His film contained the elements of a commercial film, but it is not necessarily over the top. Perhaps the term that would best define his films is middle cinema. Middle cinema is a growing sector between mainstream films and art house films that do not necessarily attract mass audience, but they seek an audience through smaller screens in the multiplexes, while also catering to a more sophisticated audience than the traditional single screen venues. Vishal Bhardwaj could and should be considered a representative of middle cinema, as his films seem to be the perfect blend of both mainstream cinema and parallel cinema. His films should also be a reminder to filmmakers and film goers that films can be made based on existing materials, infused with mainstream cinema elements, while maintaining a sense of realism and still come off as captivating and awe-inspiring motion pictures. Bollywood is now revitalized in terms of both films and music due to a wide array of films, a diverse collection of compositions, and refreshing modern takes on classic literatures. All of those made by a Protean artist named Vishal Bhardwaj.
You go to some other character, so it's like you are playing like a game with live cast, live people, and then you are telling a story. You are engaging someone, and you are like a big grandmother, grandnanny. Like you are telling a story and you make everyone feels like a kid. So and first you become a kid yourself to your own work when you see it. So it's the best profession on this earth.